Hi, I'm Dr. Owen Muir, and I like to advocate for patients who need coverage from their health insurance for treatment. I'm going to explain some of the legal background behind how I do that today and give you the tips to do it for yourself or your patients if you happen to be a health professional. So there is some historical background that will be helpful. Why is health insurance tax exempt? Well, it turns out there's a law, and it's from 1974, and it's called ERISA, E-R-I-S-A. That's short for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. ERISA established the tax-exempt status, first of 401k plans, and also of health benefits, which at the time were kind of an afterthought. That ERISA law provided for 401k plans that could not legally be a scam. So you had to be a fiduciary as a plan sponsor of a retirement plan, and that fiduciary duty meant, well, I can't sell you a retirement account that's in my interest. It has to be in your interest as an employee. And since 1974, there's been tons of litigation around the fiduciary duty of employers in offering those 401k retirement plans, which are tax exempt because your employer agreed to act as a fiduciary. That means they're acting in your interest, not in their interest. Health benefits were created at the same time, but they didn't have that same fiduciary responsibility until the year is 2001. And after many years of advocacy, one of my friends, this guy named Dave Chase, did a bunch of lobbying to get that same language around fiduciary duty, has to be in your interest, not your employer's interest, copy-pasted from 401k plans to health benefits. And that's what they did. And so in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, that's that big omnibus bill that every year controls all the federal government spending and is a great way to get some horse trading done, they included this language. So they copied over the language around fiduciary duty from retirement to health benefits. And so now your employer, in order for there to be a tax-exempt status for your health benefits, is personally liable for those benefits being in your interest, which means they can't go buy scam health insurance either. Wait a minute, Dr. Muir, isn't all health insurance pretty scammy? Well, great point you're making. Yeah, kinda. So every employer, which we call a plan sponsor if they're an ERISA plan and they're not the federal government or a state municipality, every private employer that's covered under ERISA has to be acting in your interest, and almost none of them arguably are, because there are all these provisions in health insurance that are not in your interest. For example, is there a gag clause in the health plan that prevents the plan sponsor from knowing who the contracts on the back end are between and what they say? Well, legally, as of the 31st of December, 2023, there can't be any gag clause there. And so it's really, really, really relevant now for every health plan to be on the lookout for anything that might possibly be not in the fiduciary interest of the plan members, and that's you and me and all of us who are covered by a health plan. And the named fiduciaries here are the broker who sold the plan and the employer's named fiduciaries, which includes, if you're at a big company, everyone on the pension committee and the CEO and the CFO. And so here's where it gets really nasty. So if you're the officer of a company, you're going to have insurance on your role as an officer. And that insurance is called directors and officers insurance. So if you're on the pension committee for a company, and let's just pick one out of thin air that may have already been sued in one of these cases, like Johnson & Johnson. They have a pension committee, they have a CEO, they have a CFO, and all of those people are personally liable for inappropriate behavior. And so they have coverage should they be sued by one of their employees for this under what's called directors and officers insurance. But here's the thing. Do insurance companies not health insurance, but any other kind of insurance, flood insurance companies, they're not going to underwrite massive risks, right? And directors and officers insurance doesn't cover you for illegal behavior, because that would be insane. I'm going to get insurance so I can act illegally? No, they're not going to do it. So most directors and officers policies specifically exempt ERISA fiduciary breach. So if you were selling scam 401k plans, you're not covered. Your insurance means it's on you, not on the insurance plan. And so the genius of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, making this fiduciary duty apply to health benefits, is that all the directors' officers' insurance in the world is highly unlikely to cover the directors and officers who are committing fiduciary breach as it relates to ERISA of any kind, but specifically those health benefit problems. They've basically got no coverage. And so any lawsuit comes out of their personal pockets. And if there's anything people who are wealthy enough to be the directors and officers of major companies don't like, it's losing their money. And they have no insurance coverage on what is potentially an unbelievable amount of liability. And these lawsuits are already happening. So, all that background aside, if there's something in your health plan, like for example, a generic drug costing more out of your pocket if you use your insurance than if you don't, that's called a clawback, and that's the actual name. And many health plans have clawbacks. And you ask, like, what's the price if I use my insurance? And what's the price if I just pay? And if the insurance price is more, that's not in your interest. That's a breach of fiduciary duty, at least plausibly. And what you get to do is cover your boss's butt. And so you go to your company and you say, hey, I've got a concern. And my concern is there may be something in our health plan that's not in keeping with your fiduciary duty, and I would never, ever, dear plausibly wealthy boss and pension committee of my major company, ever want you to have any liability for this thing that may be a huge problem for you. And by the way, did you know you're now personally liable? Maybe you should check with compliance. And so you email this concern that you have around the fiduciary role of your plan sponsor and your health plan, and the fact that the coverage that you have may actually not be in your interest. And you email that to HR, and so they can, wrap this up in a bow and make sure nobody gets in any liability here. And you send it to compliance, right? And you're trying to cover your boss and your company from getting in trouble and losing their money. You're acting in their interest. Look, I'm not going to sue you, but someone could. An employee who's not me, who might take a look at this situation where, for example, medications are more expensive if we use our health insurance than if we don't. Like, I looked up the price on Cost Plus Drugs with Mark Cuban, and it's cheaper. Like, why is that? Why should we pay more out of pocket for a drug, not less, right? It's a real problem. And there are other examples as well. As you will see constantly when you try to use your insurance and you find out the cash price is less than what you're having to pay personally when you use your insurance. And those are examples of plausible fiduciary breaches. And if you let your company know so they can cover their butt so they don't have any liability, you're moving the ball down the field in the right direction. So, in summary, health benefits are tax exempt thanks to the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. And subsequently the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and you have a right to health benefits that are in your interest. And that means getting your company on board with that and getting them to buy health benefits that are not a scam, or to put serious pressure on the third-party administrator of those benefits and the associated contracted entities such that it ends up not being a scam. Because if they don't, someone, and I'm not saying it's you, of course it's not you, you're not a troublemaker, could sue them and win. And it's already happening, and it's a huge problem for them, for the directors and officers of major companies, because they don't have any insurance covering this, and this could be out of their end at the end of the day. That's your legal overview on why you deserve non-scam health benefits.